ain't quite to understand.
Is there a war coming in the Middle East? Are we headed toward a one-world government, a one-world religious system? Will America be attacked again? Do ancient prophetic texts warn of a time we are living in? Are we in the last days, the time of Jacob's trouble, the end of the world as we know it? And what are the increase of UFO sightings? While we may disagree as to what is causing the phenomenon, we can agree that it is real, burgeoning, and not going away. Is this the coming great deception that ancient prophecy warns us about? Does time seem to be accelerating? Join me, your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, as we explore these and other riveting and stimulating topics. This is Acceleration Radio.
Understand why.
Folks, I have two very special film producers here with me in studio. You can see them on the screen behind me. I just want to give you an idea of what we're going to get into tonight. This will not be for the faint of heart. Abductions, alien abductions, reproduction experiments, memories of seeing children off planet. The idea of humans participating in an alien hybrid program sounds absurd until you talk to people who have experienced it. Thousands around the world have had reproductive experiments carried out against their will. The most harrowing, the termination of unexplained pregnancies. Memories remain suppressed and fragmented, leaving experiencers confused, depressed, and with a profound sense of loss. In others, the memories are visceral and emotionally disturbing. Thanks to increased acceptance, more people are coming forward with their frightening experiences. Are aliens involved in a complex hybridization project where humans are used to cultivate a hybrid population? Extraordinary, which is the name of the film, The Seeding, tells these stories through one-on-one interviews with abductees, brave individuals sharing intensely personal and emotional stories. Through analysis to global ufology experts, the film also explores hybridization, why it's happening, and the impact on humanity. The information presented is intended to educate, entertain, and encourage audiences to ask one simple question: what if it's all true? John and Jack, great to have you here on Acceleration Radio, and let's dive right into it. You guys interviewed me. Now we're turning the tables. Congratulations, first of all, on your success with the film. I know what it's like to try to get this information out, and a lot of people look at you like you got three heads. Let me start in the beginning. What motivated you? What's the backstory on making a film like this?
Jack, go ahead and take that because it goes way back.
It does go way back. It's a continuation, not a continuation, but it is. It's kind of a continuation of the story that we started with Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek story, which was our first documentary. And we kind of got involved in that after seeing a lot of that evidence and thinking it was extremely compelling and it was a story that needed to be told. But where we ended that story was with hybrid children, these children that were appearing, showing up, contacting their quote unquote, their father, their Earth father, their human father. And so we wanted to, once we started digging into that more, we started talking to a lot of women who were coming forward and talking to us about having these unexplained pregnancies and having abduction-like events that were occurring, and then also having these unexplained pregnancies afterwards, and then the termination of those pregnancies for no apparent reason. And so as John and I started to talk to more and more people, we realized that if there was an end game to this, or if there was a reason why abductions were occurring, we kept going back to the whole idea of these hybrid children, hybridization programs. And that's really when we decided, look, well, let's just continue this and let's just go further down the rabbit hole with it.
It's a very disturbing subject. And I remember when I first began to research it, which for me goes back, I started hearing about this, 25, 30 years ago. And it even goes further back than that. We all know that. But, I would kind of go up to the line and explore what the information said, and then just kind of recoil and just run away from it, just going like, it's too crazy, it's too weird, it's just, I mean, it's incredibly disturbing. And like you, I mean, I've talked to people who have been taken, and that's really disturbing when you start talking about or listening to their stories and how troubled some of these people are. Um, Give us the classic abduction scenario, or what you deem is a classic abduction scenario. Tell us what that is first, because a lot of people listening to this, I mean, my audience, I'm assuming most of my audience will know exactly what we're talking about. This is in my wheelhouse, like it's in yours. But for those who are turning in on YouTube for the first time, they might, well, abduction, they kind of heard about it, but they're not sure. Give us a thumbnail sketch. What is it?
Yeah, Jack, I'll let you kind of fill in the blanks here, but I think it really starts with, the first thing you mentioned was that it's been happening for a long time. And one of the things that we discovered in talking with the people that we interviewed is that every single one of them had been monitored since a very early age. So we had people in the film ranging from their 30s up and even people that we interviewed up into their 40s and even 50s. And they had been monitored since they were 7 years old. So they were selected quite a while ago. So we're talking 30, 40 years in some cases that people have been selected and began being monitored at a very young age. So that's kind of the first step is, you're selected, whether it's, biologically connected through generational connections to ufology and abductions and DNA. And then you're kind of tagged at a very young age to be monitored. And then from the monitoring point, it kind of escalates, from there. And Jack, I'll let you kind of fill in, take it over from that.
Sure. Well, in documenting these cases and people like Bud Hopkins and John Mack, I mean, again, going back quite a while, the typical abduction would be someone having missing time, perhaps maybe driving somewhere, and then suddenly it's 3 hours later and they don't know where the time went, or going to sleep and waking up feeling particularly groggy, and then maybe finding marks on their body, strange marks on their body. And they don't necessarily have memories right away of what happened. And sometimes it takes years and years for those memories to come back up and something to trigger the memory. And sometimes it's regression therapy, but a lot of times it starts with just a memory or two coming back, and they have anxiety, they have depression, they're scared. It's horrifying. And if it happens, usually it's happening more than once to people. And then they start remembering things, and and it's almost always in every case, it's, well, I remember being on board a craft, these ETs, whether they look like grays, the typical grays we hear about all the time, but also sometimes we hear about tall whites, reptilian-looking creatures, insectoid-looking, grasshopper-looking creatures. But for the most part, I would say a larger percentage are the grays that we've all read and seen in the movies. And then what winds up happening is they start remembering things, and they will tell of being experimented on, that they're being probed, they're being looked at from a medical standpoint, and that there's always a sexual component to it from the standpoint of their sexual organs. They're taking sperm, they're taking samples, they're taking eggs from women, and they're experimenting, and they're doing, they're looking at their reproductive organs. And then what winds up happening is sometimes years later, they'll remember, right afterwards, they'll have some of the women, they'll have these pregnancies, and they're false pregnancies, or they'll be pregnant. And in the first trimester, all of a sudden, overnight, they're not pregnant anymore. And it'll correspond to another abduction event and an abduction experience, and then boom, they're not. So what's happening is, and what they remember is that they're gestating this fetus in their body, and then it's being taken out. Within the first 3 months, it's being taken out, and it's gone now. And then again, having more of these experiences, a lot more trauma, post-traumatic stress. And then years later, some of them talk about being abducted again, and then being taken to these children on board craft and saying that this is your child, and can you love them? Can you nurture them? Be with them, hug them? And what's fascinating is you hear it over and over again. Now, obviously, stories vary a little bit, but for the most part, there was this these very clear patterns that developed, and again, the seminal researchers in this, the Bud Hopkins and the John Max and other people who did this years ago, they came to these same conclusions that these people are having very, very similar experiences. And it's something really that we need to pay attention to. So that, I would say, is the typical abduction scenario. I mean, there are other factors, there's other things involved in it, but that, I would say, would be the typical kind of abduction experience.
You know, the title of the film is The Seeding. And of course, I've interviewed Dr. David Jacobs, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now. And he believes, as I do, in the title of his book, hybrids are walking amongst us. And I've interviewed people that have had encounters with beings which can only be described as some sort of hybrid, human/alien being, whatever that is. Jacobs believes, as I do, that this is extremely nefarious. It's done under the cover of darkness. These people who are taken, it's always against their will. In fact, let me just interject something here, more conversational than question. But I remember I was speaking at a MUFON lecture, and in fact, I did it in just several months ago. And I asked the audience, I said, how many of you in the audience think it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old boy against his will? Not a hand went up. And these are hardcore ufologists. These are people that have, read every book and gone to the conferences and done the homework. Not one hand went up. So what are your thoughts? I mean, is this a benevolent scenario, a malevolent scenario, or is it too early to tell? Is it nefarious? Is it something benign? What are your thoughts?
I think it's, when you think about it from, is it any different than the way things are here on Earth? There's good people, there's bad people, there's people who are good that become bad, there's people who are bad that become good. And, the biggest thing that's hard to do in telling these stories and doing the research and doing the investigations is determining the truth. What is the truth? We haven't been presented with it yet, so there's a lot of conjecture, but we can make a lot of assumptions based on the research that's been done before us. And, usually you have, 3 different camps, and we'll be exploring this a little bit further in our next film. But you have the religious paradigm, you have the ascension paradigm, and you have the colonization paradigm. And all 3 of them strongly believe that aliens exist, there's abductions going on, there's hybridization programs, but the end games and then the pathways to why they're doing what they're doing are very, very different. As you well know, we've talked with you about it, we've interviewed you about it, and you'll be in our next film about it. So, I think the challenge with this is for anybody that is a believer, they're going to firmly grasp onto what they know most. They're going to, cling to the research that they've done, the experiences that they've had, and that becomes their reality. One of the things that we're trying to do with this film and in all of our films is just open minds. We're not out to prove anything. We're not out to, sit on one side of the fence or the other, but just present a lot of information so that the people who never have been exposed to this information before can have a better understanding of the possibilities. So, I think a lot of people, when they see this film, it's going to resonate with them. I think other people, it won't, because it's just not within their firm grasp of reality and what they believe to be our true existence. So to answer your question, from my perspective, I'm not sure. I really don't know what the end game is, but there's compelling evidence in all 3 of those areas that could have anybody who wants to dive deep enough into any one of those to come out, the end of the rabbit hole and say, yeah, I believe this.
Well, let me ask you guys this. People are encountering hybrid entities. And I mean, I've talked to people that have come on the record with me, and some of it in film, and others just they don't want to come on film. But I mean, again, deferring back or pointing back to Dr. David Jacobs' book, these entities, these hybrid beings, look human. They can pass. Mm-hmm. They're integrating with us. And you go back 20, 25 years ago, that wasn't the case. They didn't look human. I mean, they looked more alien than human. Now they can pass, allegedly. And the people that have had contact with them are very disturbed. Let me just tell you one story and you guys can weigh in on it. There's a friend of mine who's a pastor, and he wrote me, like, texted me on the phone minutes after it had happened. So it was like, you can't believe what just happened. He's walking, he lives in Kentucky, and he's walking around a park doing what we call a prayer walk. He's just praying for people in his congregation. He's a pastor, all right? And in front of him, a good distance away, there's a very athletic, well-proportioned, athletic woman with strikingly platinum blonde hair, tucked back in a ponytail, and she's running at a really good clip apparently, and very, very muscular, well-defined, an athlete. So he figures, well, maybe it's a volleyball player, a basketball player, whatever. But as she gets closer, he begins to grow disturbed, and he's not sure why. So she's about 20 feet away. Their eyes lock. She has blue eyes. The distance closes rapidly. The eyes shift and go black. At this point, he starts what we would call warfare, spiritual warfare. And he rebukes her. And as she runs by him, she bares her teeth and growls at him. Now, that's a very disturbing story. Now, in your opinion, what do you think that was? Was it a hybrid being or something else?
I would. It's hard to say, unless, and it's funny, unless you're there to see it, it's hard to say. And even if you're there, I'm sure you're left wondering what in the world was that. I mean, I would start thinking, okay, well, maybe it was someone who was possessed. That's a possibility. It could have been a hybrid. I mean, depending on, exactly what they look like, who knows? There's no way that you can know that. It could have just been, it could have been, you get into the area of cryptozoology, right? I mean, was she a half wolf, half, but again, how do you tell? I give the man credit for telling you the story.
Right.
And that
That's so important.
Yeah, he trusted you enough to say, you know what? You're going to think I'm wacky, but you need to hear this story, LA. And he told you the story, and I'm sure you appreciated the fact that he told you the story. I mean, it's hard for people when you experience something like that. What in the world are you supposed to do with that experience?
Well, it definitely is disturbing. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, but I think this will, drill into the importance of your film and your work. On Tucker Carlson in 2017, I'm sure you guys know exactly where I'm going with this, but in Tucker Carlson 2017, he had Commander David Fravor on. Now, Fravor is an unknown guy. Nobody knows Commander David Fravor. He doesn't have a book, doesn't have a DVD, he's not in a movie. Nobody knows who this guy is, okay? He's on Tucker Carlson, so it's Tucker here, Fravor in the middle, and over here, they've got classified film of a tic-tac-shaped UFO. Now, obviously, it's not classified anymore, but it's on Fox. But it begs the question, how does Fravor get on Fox with the classified film? How does all that work? Who calls up whom and go, hey, it's time to break the story here? And since that, 2017, it's now 2019, there's been a series of people on Tucker Carlson. That seems to be the anointed, dare I use that word, the anointed venue to begin to break the story, to disclose the reality of the so-called extraterrestrial presence. I about fell out of my chair when he had Luis Elizondo on, about a month and a half, 2 months ago now, maybe a little further back. And he asked Elizondo, in your opinion, does the United States government have a crashed debris or debris from a crashed UFO? And Elizondo looks right at the camera and says, yes. And Tucker redirects the question again and goes, and you're trying to tell us that the United States government, our government, has wreckage from a crashed UFO. And then Elizondo sort of hems and haws, which I think is all scripted. I think it was a softball question which he was supposed to ask. It was all a scripted interview. Well, Tucker, I really take my non-disclosure agreement very seriously, but the short answer to that is yes. Well, you just blew your NDA right out of the water by even answering it. What are your thoughts? I mean, look, this stuff is now mainstream. It's no longer on coast to coast. It's mainstream. What are your thoughts?
And it's going to keep it's going to be more and more. There's been more documentary films made. There's more television shows made. There's more podcasts. There's more experts writing books. It's becoming part of the culture, an acceptable part of the culture, to one, have an experience, and two, talk about it. But I think one of the things that we're starting to see is not necessarily a comfort, because it's a discomforting concept, but this comfort of moving forward with the conversation, that it's okay to talk about this. Language that has been used in the past was always to kind of demean individuals that talked about it, or disrupt their credibility by discounting things that they said. And that's happened to numerous people over the years, going all the way back to Kino, who was made to look like a clown.
Yeah.
But he was very serious in the information that he was presenting at the time. So you look at some of the information that he presented back in the 50s, and his belief system is obvious. And then you have people discrediting him. I think it was Mike Wallace that did the famous interview with him, and Mike Wallace is kind of making him look foolish. We're not seeing that anymore. We're not seeing people, even going back a few years ago, even when Stan Romanek was on with what's his name?
Was it Larry King?
The Larry King show. Yeah, the Larry King show. Right. There was an attempt during that show to discredit both him and Mr. Peck during that interview. It was almost like they were set up to look foolish. But now, if that interview happened today, with a different person and a different experience, you would see, an interest in it as opposed to the desire to tear it apart. Sure, there's going to be debunkers out there. I'm sure there's going to be people who are non-believers and just need something tangible to land in their lap before they're going to say, yes, I believe. But we're having public conversations on a regular basis that is, I think, elevating the conversation. And I guess the big question is this by design? Because you're getting more and more of these government types, doing whistleblower type of interviews and sharing of documents, and all of a sudden, boom, footage that didn't exist or wasn't discussed or was discredited years ago is now like, oh yeah, we have this and we're going to share it, and it's part of the public conversation. So it makes you wonder, where are we moving? What are we moving toward? Are we moving toward a technology disclosure first? Because it seems that there's a lot of emphasis on the tech side. But the bigger question, I think, is going to be, when do we have a serious conversation about the intelligence behind the technology?
Jack, you want to weigh in on that, or?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with John, and I think I'm dubious when it comes to. I think that it's very controlled. When I see these shows now, and people are being more accepting, the hosts are all of a sudden, it's not the giggle factor.
Yeah, everything's changed.
More serious about it.
Yeah.
But I do agree with what you said, LA, is that there's a scripted nuance to it. There's this is what we're going to tell people now. And this is what we're going to dribble out now, and only this, because I still think there's people that get in a lot of trouble for saying things that they know that they shouldn't say yet. And I think it's very controlled. So yeah, here's the thing. It's funny when we have these incredible conversations with people like you, LA, and others, and when we're with our team and we're eating dinner, we're talking about this, right? And we're having these conversations, but it's weird. We have to change gears when we become filmmakers again. We put the filmmaker hats back on, and then it doesn't all go away. It's all in our heads, but we have to. We're trying to tell a story objectively, and our personal opinions about it, we have to try to keep out, because we have developed personal opinions based on our experiences over the years. But in the films, you don't see that. We keep that to ourselves.
Guys, that's incredible. It's we're at the bottom of the hour. We got to take a break here, folks. The movie is called The Seeding. Extraordinary, The Seeding. I have not seen it. I've seen the trailer. I'm in, I guess, a future one. I guess it's episode 3 or something that's coming out in 2020.
Yeah.
And I'm honored to be part of that. And we'll see what happens in the edit room. But yeah,
you'll be in it this time.
There you go. But keep it right here, folks. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Lying in the night car, blue canopy below, and the searching cry
Hey folks, it's now time to hear from our sponsor, Jingos. I just want to tell you that I know the president of the company. I've met the guys in the warehouse. It's a small operation, but it's fantastic. It's American made right here in Nurkahaya. And Jeff's just a great guy. And you know, they do us a service. They make this stuff, and you know what? It really does work. www.buyjingos.com, buyjingos.com. If you have a testimony, give me an email, la@lamarzulli.net. I'll read it right here. This is one of my favorite ones, and I've kept it up because it's so graphic. I mean, it's like in your face. It's like, here's this kid, and I'm not even going to read it because I know it by memory. Here's this kid that's got some Italian ice, and he spills it all over the T-shirt. And look at it. It's a total disaster, right? So the dad goes, well, I'll just rub a T-shirt out, no worries. Mom goes, wait, we bought some Jingos. Let's give it a try. They give it a try. Guess what? Look at the T-shirt on the right-hand side. Completely clean, dazzling white, no stain left. www.buyjingos.com. Here's one of my favorite ones. This Doberman rolls like most dogs in the yard. He stinks to high heaven. The collar stinks. This lady comes over and bathes him, and she forgot to do the collar, and they sprayed it on the collar. And all of a sudden, the collar doesn't smell anymore. Jingos is an enzyme, and it goes in, and it really works. We use it here all the time. This stuff really does work, folks. www.buyjingos.com.
By Jingos, it's amazingly fresh and clean out here in beautiful New Zealand. G'day America, I'm Tabi, and I want to tell you about my new ultimate stain and odour remover, Jingos. My Jingos gunk gobblers will tackle stubborn organic stains and eliminate nasty stinking odours at the same time. Jingos effectively removes those little accidents like wine, coffee, dirt, blood, grass, even pet stains, and odours like fish, garlic, even skunk. Jingos is environmentally friendly, safe for use on fabrics, carpet, upholstery, and it works great as a laundry pre-soak on the worst pet or people accidents. Come on America, what are you waiting for? Just go online and order your Jingos for $12.95 and get a 4-ounce travel pack free. Crikey, pay $19.95 and I'll double your order. That's 2 large Jingos and 2 travel packs for just $19.95. Blasted seagulls, where's my Jingos?
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood. Whether it's a natural disaster or one single child suffering from illness, the American Red Cross stands ready to supply blood when it's most needed. But blood is a perishable product. Therefore, it must continuously be replenished. You can safely donate blood every 56 days. The need is constant and patients are waiting. Call your American Red Cross at 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to schedule your life-saving appointment. Please give blood today. Patients are depending on you.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey folks, thanks for keeping it right here on Acceleration Radio, right on KGRA. And of course on our YouTube channel, LA Marzulli. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe, and thank you, the 105,000 people so far who have subscribed. Our guest, John Sumple, Jack Roth. The movie is called Extraordinary: The Seeding, and we're talking about all things abduction. Look, and it's a very troubling subject because it deals with something which is usually done in secret, and that's my question. Why the secrecy here? Why are people abducted at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Why the screen memories? Why is it that if the Greys show up in a typical bedroom scene with a husband and wife in a bed, one of them is switched off, one of them is taken? Why is that? Why the secrecy, in your opinion?
John, you start with that one.
Yeah, this is a tough one to kind of wrap your, because as documenters of people's story, which is really what we're attempting to do, is to we're not necessarily doing investigative reporting, trying to disrupt someone's story or take them down. That's what we're trying to do, is find the stories that are common across a wide variety of different people in a wide variety of areas around the world who have there's commonality, and to share those stories. But the one thing that we've experienced in some of these conversations is the profound anguish that these people go through during those moments, and it's disturbing when you hear different people tell their stories. We have an entire sequence in the film that talks about rape, being actually raped by a being, an extraterrestrial being. And, I even, in the moment that it happened, I had to even question her. I said, "You used the word rape," and I wasn't trying to be, flippant. I was just shocked to hear that, coming from somebody saying, "Yeah, I was forcibly taken against my will, and pinned down and raped." And she said, "On more than one occasion." So when you hear something like that, it is a term that anybody can relate to. It's a harrowing thing. And I guess what begs the question is, are we all from the same DNA, and this is just a deal where there's experimentation going on? So we get tech, they get DNA. And if that's the case, that's even more disturbing, because some agreement happened at some point, along the line to allow this to happen. But the whole thing about it being in secret is, I think, the $1 million question. Why? Why would something, if we're supposed to be galactic brothers, is this happening against our will? What do we have that they want that they can't, just come to the table and say, "Let's have a discussion about this"? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but why is it so? That's the scariest part about all of this, is when you think about, if it's never happened to you, you can't relate. And if it's happened to somebody who, when they're telling their story, they're profoundly impacted emotionally, and every single time they share a story, they break down, you have to be able to embrace that from a humanistic point of view. And I'm challenged by that part of the equation. We hear that, the stories. I haven't had an abduction experience, so I can't relate to it. But what we're trying to do is to share those stories in the most compelling way possible. Now, Jack, I'm sure you have thoughts on that as well.
No, and again, I think it's perfect. I agree with you, but I also think it comes down to agenda. So it's secretive because that's the agenda, and if that's obviously that's not a very positive agenda. And I also think that not upsetting the status quo is part of that agenda. So if they were to just do what they wanted to do and come out when everyone saw it happening, there would be chaos. And I think there's some kind of a control mechanism in place, whether it be with governments, militaries, that it's some type of agreement where it's like, you do this, we do this, you benefit this way, we benefit this way. Well, who loses? Well, the people who are getting abducted, and the ETs, whoever these beings might be, you almost have to think way outside of the box and think, I can't even think as a human being anymore. I don't know how these entities might even think about what's right and wrong, what's worth doing. They might think it's absolutely worth doing what they're doing there's a means to an end, and it's okay.
Sure.
And in the end, guys, this is going to be great. Yes, we're taking you against your will. We're doing this and we're doing that. But in the end, it's going to all be a good thing. And, I just think it's a scary question you ask, because when you say, why the secrecy, there's really no positive answer to that. There's
Right.
no good answer to that. There's no, because it's all love and light. If it was love and light, if it was truly love and light, why the secrecy?
Right.
Right.
I don't know if you guys have ever read Graham Hancock's book Supernatural, but Hancock's down there taking ayahuasca numerous times. That might be a little problematic, but he's kind of taken aback by what he's seeing as he's popping out of this dimension and crashing into another, and he sees the grays, what we would call the big heads, the eyes, the whole deal. The grays are there. And he's perplexed. He's like, well, what are the grays doing here? I mean, I'm looking for spiritual enlightenment, and the grays are here? And in my opinion, he's gone to a place where we call, in my circles, from a biblical point of view, the second heaven. And he's seeing those things. And at the very end of the book, he goes through, multiple ayahuasca trips, and he's like wrestling with all this stuff and trying to, get a feel for it and understand what he's experiencing. At the very end of the book, he goes, whoever these entities are, and here's the kicker, which ties right into your title, Extraordinary, the Seeding. Whoever these entities are, they seem obsessed with mating with us and creating a hybrid. Mm-hmm. John, first, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I'll be the first to admit that I am not an expert, and one of the things that Jack and I have done from the very beginning is he is our research kind of expert, has a lot of knowledge before I even got involved, and I come to it more from having that sense of naivete and wonder, and I think that benefits the way that we tell our stories, because if I'm coming at it from the perspective of, I didn't know that, tell me more. And if I am coming from that point of view, the audience will I think, feel that as well. So I'm not going in there with, my list of 10 questions, determined to get to an end result that we want to portray in the film. It's more a matter of wonder. So we take that, from that point of view. So, the whole process is from a storytelling point of view, is a little bit more of a gee whiz from my perspective. Obviously, we don't portray it that way. But I completely lost my train of thought there.
That happens.
What was the question again?
Well, I mean, why, Hancock's up there and he goes, they're trying to make a hybrid. He knows that. He can see it.
Yes.
And they're obsessed with it. They're obsessed with making a hybrid being.
Yes.
He realizes that.
Right.
They want to mate with us. And that's exactly, the title of your film, right. Extraordinary, the Seeding. I mean, they're making a hybrid being.
Now I remember where I was going with that. When I first started doing the research back in 2009, I spent, I think, 3 or 4 days, every waking moment of those 3 or 4 days on Project Camelot, watching anything and everything that I could. And, talk about indoctrination to the whole subject matter. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned there, too, is that they're based on the research that I did and then the subsequent conversations that I had, is that something is missing from them, and they're searching for that. They're looking for that connection to free will and a sense of that the ability to change our pathways, the ability for us to manifest a different outcome if we're not happy with where we are. And that was one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again, is that there's something missing. And if you believe in the timeline scenarios, that, they're future us, and, over time, over the millennium, things have been basically bred out of them, and they're looking for that magic elixir to bring it back. And if that's the case, if we truly are lab rats, being manipulated by the future versions of ourselves, that is an extremely sad scenario. And, from your perspective, LA, where you come from the biblical narrative, this is extremely disturbing, because it's changing. It becomes part of the Great Deception.
Yeah.
It becomes part of, we're being pulled down a path that is not it doesn't follow the religious narrative, the biblical narrative in any way. So I think really what we wind up becoming in this is just things in a petri dish. And if they're playing around with us, and like Jack had mentioned before, there is no positive outcome. But some people might argue that how is it any different than what we do to living beings when we test them? We take mice and we do lab rat tests, and we go out and tag animals in the wild, and we monitor them and follow them. But they're living beings. Somebody might look at the higher powers looking down at the lab rat, or the higher powers tagging the elk, and we're the elk. So maybe we don't understand the paradigm of the realities of our structure, and if it's interdimensional, or are we really that low on the totem pole of superiority because we think we're at the top, and maybe we're not. So maybe from that point of view, we just have a lot to learn, but I think it's a little bit more of a seeking for something that's missing.
Jack, you want to add to that?
Sure. And again, this is just all opinion, like John said. No one has all the answers.
Yeah, nobody does.
We can try to put some of the pieces of the puzzle to get together. And I think objectively, and I always say this to John, I think as an objective person, as someone who is looking at this in an objective way, that I could comfortably say this after everything we've learned. I don't know if that's totally true or not, but I feel good about that theory. And of course, then a week later it changes. But what I would think is, when you said that they're dying to mate with us, they're dying to, have these hybrids and use us in that capacity. I would say from everything I've learned and experienced that I would not blink if it came out tomorrow and said, oh, well, we're really all ETs, and this has been going on for thousands of years. They've been messing with our DNA for 40,000 years, 80,000 years ago, for earliest man. And they might have even messed with the dinosaurs. I mean, who knows, right? But from a human race perspective, it really if you really think about it objectively, it kind of makes sense that some of our DNA is part of them, and that they've been doing this for quite some time. And I'll add this, because I think this is important, and it was at some point when John was talking that it clicked, because he said something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but at what point do we think in 3D terms, right? So we think we're 3D beings. So a lot of people can't get past, they have to think, even if they believe in ETs as ETs, they're thinking 3D, they come from another 3D planet. They come here on 3D physical spaceships. They do physical things to us. They experiment like we experiment, and we all live in this 3D world. Well, guess what? We keep hearing over and over again, well, they're interdimensional. They're ninth dimensional beings. They're 12th dimensional beings. And you have all of this quantum physics that's bearing all this other stuff out. And then you have to ask yourself the question, where do ETs, human beings, and our connection to spirit, angels, demons, cryptozoology, leprechauns? I mean, I'm taking it to the extreme with leprechauns, but seriously, beings from other dimensions, what we always perceived as angels, what we always perceived as demons, what we always perceived as ETs, where does that all intersect? Maybe there's a place where it all intersects, and that's something for us as 3D beings to wrap our heads around. Right. And I think that's what always stops the conversation. We're like, yeah, we're done here. Let's just do more research, because it's like wow, what do you do with that?
Right. Give me a second.
It might not be as advanced as we thought we were.
Right.
True. Just give me 1 second. Make sure. We're all good. Okay. Do a 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. For me, where the whole, and I've heard this over and over and over and over again. Well, they're just coming here. It's like we're like lab rats. We take animals, we make hybrids. But wait. These are entities mating with us. They're mating with us. It's a different deal. It's like we're not out there mating with an elk trying to get an elk human hybrid.
True.
Although it's starting to happen in the labs now, which to me is incredibly troubling. But genetic engineering, the chimera stuff.
True.
So it's like the centaurs, minotaurs, all the Greek mythos might be happening. Whatever this is, again, we talked about the secrecy of the breeding program. These entities have spent an enormous amount of time, energy, and resources on this. This is not some lark. This is not some we just go down and this is like it's directed. I mean, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's very extremely deliberate. And I find that aspect of it incredibly troubling. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you start to think about us being a pawn in the game, why? Why would that? If there is a enlightened being up there, why would we be a part of that pawn? Or why would we be a part of the game as a pawn, especially when we have this belief structure of superiority, of being the highest level? I think if we are being taken against our will, if we are being used for the benefit of another race, although I agree with Jack that I think we all share a common DNA. I think we're, when you think about it from a universal cosmic perspective, we all come from source. And if we all come from source, we're all part of the same cosmic family. But why are we being subjected to this? And that is extremely troubling. And that is a question that I think we haven't had enough time to wrap our brains around it, because we're still trying to find out if that light in the sky it has intelligent life behind it maneuvering it. That's where our heads are stuck. That's why there's so much focus placed on the shiny metal objects in the sky, the lights in the sky. People want evidence. They want to see the phenomena. They want to see the spaceships. There is not as much conversation. So we want to see the spaceships, then we want to talk about the intelligent life, and then, oh, by the way, all the crap that they're doing to us is horrifying. So when you kind of look at it, we haven't got to the point where we can really do a deep dive on how malevolent this is, how horrible it is, if indeed it is happening. So, yeah, I mean, there is, I'm an optimist. I kind of try to look for the good thing. This is a tough one to try to find a lot of good, if indeed the end game is that we're being used for the benefit of another race, another existence.
Yeah, and if I can add,
Please.
and I agree, we can go really dark with this, but the one thing that we have to consider is that there really are different agendas. There really are. I think there's dark and light, there's good and evil, right? That yin yang, that we seem to be, that we're very connected to that. And I think that when we talk about maybe some of the malevolent things that are going on and people being taken against their will, et cetera, that most certainly is happening. But there also could be people watching over us. There could be ET races and civilizations that are making sure that they have that these whatever is going on, that they can only do so much of it, or that they're not going to let them colonize or completely destroy the planet, or there might be wars going on and battles that we don't even know about between other entities, interdimensional beings, ETs, or whoever they might be. And I think that we have to keep that in mind. And I think as human beings, I think the thing that comforts me personally, from a personal standpoint, is that I feel one of the reasons why they are interested in us, so interested in us, because we really do have a strong connection to our ability to love, and our ability for compassion, and our ability to connect to source. And when I say source, I think depending on your religious beliefs and your belief systems, that could be a different thing. It could be the light, source, God, supreme intelligence, whatever that might be. For whatever reason, human beings are connected to that pretty strongly. And I think that maybe some of these other ET races, or whatever they are, whoever they are, they're not. And I heard one person give a really convincing argument that that's why they're so interested in us, because they want part of us. That's why they want to hybridize with us, because they want that connection that they don't have. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is all really interesting food for thought. I mean, these are really cool conversations to have. They really are. But I think the bottom line in the end is, though, the reality is that these experiences that people are having are real. It's part of the human experience. They are suffering because they're having these experiences. They are suffering. No one is making a fortune coming out and saying that they're
nobody is
or
right.
an experience.
Right. In fact, it's exactly the opposite.
Their life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Their life turns upside down.
Yeah.
Right.
We have 3 people that are featured in this film that are their stories really haven't been out there. Geraldine Orozco's story has evolved and emerged as a result of what she's been going through because of her experiences. But we have 2 other people, in April and Rob, in the film. They're putting themselves out there, and were willing to do so because they thought it would benefit other people, make other people feel like they're not alone, that they're going through something profound and they don't quite know how to deal with it, and they're dealing with it the best that they can. And we really hope that people who had experience and maybe have buried them will see a film like this and be like, wow, my tribe exists. They're out there. I need to find them. I need to tell my story. I need to find other people who are willing to be, as believing of my story and compassionate toward, someone who's had the experiences that I've had. And I think that's really a big part of the film, is that we want people to realize that just because you haven't had an experience doesn't mean it wasn't real to the person who has. And we need to be consoling and compassionate and willing to listen to people who've been through something that, for those of us who have not had abduction experiences, we can't even begin to imagine what that might be like. So instead of turning away from people who've been through something so challenging, maybe we should turn towards them.
And you know what? I mean, people like yourself, when I go to conferences, I had people come up to me, and because they trust me, just like they would trust you. And they'll tell me stories that they've never told another human being. And it's an honor to be able to be a sounding board like that. And we get emails, all week long from people telling me their stories. And some of them are are very deeply troubling. Many of them I've heard numerous times before, and can fill in the blanks before they even tell me what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they'll ask, have you heard that before? And I go, of course I've heard that before. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. It's been going on forever. You know what amazes me is that, in my opinion, and you guys know where I'm going to go with this, having that whole biblical worldview, but this all hails back to the Genesis 3:15 narrative, which basically talks about the seed of the woman and against the seed of a dragon, and I mean it's a seed war, it's the offspring. And when I remember sitting down with Chuck Missler a few years back, and I said, what's going on with the hybridization? What's with the hybrids? And Chuck looked at me, never blinked at all. Just immediately answered. He said, "The dragon, Satan's out number 2 to 1. He's building an army." And I mean, if that's true, and there's no way to know. In my wheelhouse, that's what I believe. But that's my own personal belief. Mm-hmm. I believe that that's the truth. I believe that that's what's going on. But let me ask you something. We're kind of winding down here. And I'll make this a real quick question, and hope you guys can, answer it succinctly, and then tell us how we can get the film and watch the film. But the last question is this: what happens when they really show up? I mean, really show up.
Yeah, that's the biggie in it. And you have, people who've written books. Richard Dolan wrote a great book, After Disclosure.
After Disclosure, sure.
What are the real reality? What are the real realities to that? I think it's a real problem. I don't know how you get around it. Part of the problem has been the secrecy. Our own governments have had that kind of mentality of secrecy and demeaning anyone who says anything about the existence of UFOs as being real. How do you backtrack on that? So if these beings show up, now again, it depends. No matter what they are and who they are, there's going to be a segment of our population based on their belief system that doesn't believe they are who they say they are. So there's so many, and again, that's probably why the secrecy. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with, because we've been held back from being a cosmic neighbor for whatever reason. Maybe we should already be part of this, galactic collective evolved race that is, out there exploring the universe. And maybe we've been held back for a certain reason. And if that's the case, then how do we get past that now? There would be so many people held accountable for things such as, rape, murder, kidnapping, abduction.
Yeah,
these are all crimes.
It's very complex. It's extremely complex.
It's the question is extreme. We could go on for hours about it, but
my only 2 cents on that is that we have a tendency, because we live in a more of an Earth perspective, an Earth view on everything, is that, well, how are we going to integrate them into our existence? And I think the bigger question is, how are we going to integrate into theirs? Where does that take us? Where do we go from here? And that's a question you can't even begin to answer, because just because they show up here doesn't mean that they're just going to come and visit us, we'll pop in and see you guys over the weekend, and then we're going to go back to our plan. It's going to open up things that we've never even comprehended or even thought about.
It's the ultimate paradigm shift. Everything changes. Guys, how can the audience check out Extraordinary, the seating? Please give us the info.
It debuts worldwide on digital platforms on September 3rd at 3 a.m. iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Video, Vudu, Xbox, PlayStation platforms, Vimeo. Most of the major platforms for digital viewing, it will be available, then. So we're really excited about having it get out there. The screenings that we've had so far at different festivals, and the response has been an emotional one, and it also has been a triggering event for so many people who've seen it, that has them questioning, well, when that happened to me, was that abduction related? Was that, it is going to, I think, have an effect that we can't even begin to understand, because I really do feel that a lot of people are going to respond to what they see.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on the record. It's been quite a romp here, and we'll have to have you back on. I'm looking forward to the next installment. But my hat's off to you guys. It's hard to make a film. People don't realize the amount of work that goes into it. And then, you just sit there, eat some popcorn, and you watch it, and it's over an hour, and But, meanwhile, you guys are living it, and I know what that's like. And, kudos, and I wish you great success. Hey, folks, I just want to tell you that I'll be at the True Legends Conference with all these people here. Steve Quayle, Alberino, L.A. Marzulli, Chase Klotsky, Gary Stearman, Michael Schratt, Hugo DeGaris, and last but not least, George Knapp, who broke the story about Bob Lazar. And I want to hopefully do an interview with George while I'm there. That should be really interesting. But it's September 13th to the 15th, Branson, Missouri. www.truelegends.com, truelegends.com. I think there might be some seats left. You got to hurry up. If not, get the live streaming, because that way you can watch everything at the comfort of your home in shorts and a leisure t-shirt without worrying about, getting a seat and all this other stuff. So www.truelegends.com. Remember, Alberino, Quayle, Klotsky, Marzulli, Knapp, DeGaris, Schratt, and Gary Stearman. It's got a great lineup. I'm really looking forward to speaking there, and I'm going to hopefully have some new material along with that. I'll be talking about the implants and all my research with UFOs, but there's some other stories that have come across my desk recently, which is incredibly troubling. Our new book, UFO Disclosure, gets into some of that. If you have not gotten it yet, please check out www.lamarzulli.net. Also, on the Trail of a Nephilim, Secrets of the Supernatural, Episode 3 is now available at the store. Episode 1 is on our Vimeo account, L.A. Marzulli. Folks, when you procure books and DVDs that we make right here, it keeps me in the field, it keeps the lights on in the studio, and it lets me know that there's some feedback here, that people want what we're doing. Without that, there's no point in going on. Anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for. Remember, I'll see you on the air or in the air. Thanks for watching.
The story of the reptile, called the Prince of the Power of the Air,
because there's real demonic power and forces behind these locations.
I heard a commotion and I turned around and...
There's no question there's a spiritual implication.
is it was built upon monolithic stones, which so it was originally a Nephilim stronghold.
So what we're seeing that little stick figure.
The table was actually levitating by itself.
Sites are Nephilim architecture, have anything to do with fallen angels, and of course that means demonic activity.
And something hits me right on my belt, knocks the breath out of me.